The Canadian Bitcoiners podcast is just two guys and maybe a guest or two discussing Bitcoin, Bitcoin equities, and the related macroeconomic space. It's not meant to be financial advice, so please, if you're doing any investing, after listening to our program, do your own research, do your own due diligence, and understand that any money you invest can be lost. The show is meant for entertainment purposes only, and we hope you enjoy the program.
Friends and enemies, welcome back to the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast here on CBP Media Network. My name is Joey. That's Len, my brother in Christ. What's going on today? What a day in terms of weather. What a day in terms of activities here. What's going on in your
What happened with the weather over there?
It's great. What do you mean? It's a fantastic day today.
Oh, it didn't rain?
No.
We got, it rained on us for about half the day.
We got a little bit this morning, but it was good by the time I got home from walking my dog.
Lucky, yeah. No, it was basically screwed over my lunch. I was wanting to take Sabrina to go play some tennis at lunch because she was home today.
Nice.
Never happened. So
you guys had a PA day. There was no PA day here, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I have no idea, but she definitely had a PA day. And I wanted to take her out for some tennis. But again, as I said, it's just, you got lucky, man. What can I say? You know what? Another thing is it's rained on us a ton for our golf. Yeah. And we haven't played all that much because, well, it's the rain. It's just a funny year with respect to my what I want to do outside. I seem to get screwed over by the rain. And whatever it is, what it is. It's
all good, buddy. Don't worry about it. Glad to hear you're doing okay.
Don't want to complain.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise things are good. We got we had a brief relationship with $70,000 Bitcoin this morning, which was nice. Haven't seen 70,000 in a few weeks. We'd like to see that again tonight during the show. Let's see what we can do.
Did we celebrate at all, or just it's
I didn't sell you anything. I was just I tweeted the corn emoji at the gym. That's it. That's the extent of my celebration. So there you go. Anyway, why don't we do the sponsors? Then we'll hop into the housekeeping, and we got a full slate of stuff for you guys tonight. As always, EasyDNS. What can you say about EasyDNS that hasn't been said about penicillin or the wheel? Truly an innovative company making a difference in the lives of Canadians and international patrons alike. Mark and team have a company where you can bring a domain if you have one already. You can buy a domain if you don't have one already. You can use their services to build a website. You can use their services to start something on the virtual private server side. Maybe you want to do a Bitcoin node, Nostr Relay, BTC Pay Server. There's got to be other stuff that I'm not thinking of that we don't know about that they also do. And if you guys listen to Access of Easy, you would also know that Mark will help you secure your domain in a way that makes sense, is responsible, efficient, effective, and cutting edge. I don't know if Access of Easy is a show where every week I think to myself that it's a good thing we know Mark, because if we didn't, we probably have run into some problems by now. But head over there, tell Mark we sent you. CBP Media is the code, and you get 50% off your first round of buys, which is great. I know you guys using the code. I don't know for what. Maybe hoarding domains. I know Len was a domain hoarder. I'm not sure if you still are, but
no. I've just started looking recently into some interesting ones. Definitely, I haven't hoarded anything in terms of domain names.
Noted. Okay, interesting.
No, there's somebody else we know that does it, but I don't want to out him just in case he doesn't want to be known for that. But yeah, definitely we know somebody that has a ton, more than one. Actually, I know two people I know that have. Yeah. But again, I don't want to out them. So
anyway, the other sponsor, who is it?
Well, Bitcoin. Bitcoin. As you mentioned, the price of Bitcoin hit $70,000 US today. What was that, right? Close to 100K Canadian? Is that
we're pushing? Yeah, we're pushing. It's got to be 90. 98, 99, 97, something like that. I'm not sure. I don't really keep track of the value of the dollar, although it looks like we're going to get a cut this week. So I'll tell you, the value of that dollar is going to go down. The value of the loonie is going to go down, which would be fine. But anyway,
how about against Mexican pesos? Let's do how many? Let's not go there. Anyways, so yeah, whole Bitcoin. Obviously, since the price of Bitcoin has gone up, you have the opportunity to sell if you want. So you could sell through your on-chain, you could sell through Lightning, but also you could buy. Because you're not going to just sell. I'd prefer people buy and do your own research, not financial advice, of course. But Bull has you covered with that. You could obviously buy your Bitcoin through them. But a couple of other things that they have. Number one, you can buy gift cards with your Bitcoin. So again, the price of Bitcoin has gone up considerably in the past year or so. So if you want to start spending that Bitcoin in the real world, you could do so indirectly by buying those gift cards through Bull Bitcoin, and through that you could spend your Bitcoin indirectly, and you're sort of living on the Bitcoin standard. And also what you could do is pay your bills with Bull Bitcoin. So you have your bills, you have your car payment, you have your electricity bill, where the fuck you have. You can use your Bitcoin through Bull Bitcoin and pay those bills, which is really, really cool. So a lot of different options over there. They also released an app for just very, very, very recent. I think in the last month. I still haven't taken a look at it, so it's hard for me to say. I'd love to hear what people think about that app, because it's still rather new. I think it was first announced last year, and a lot of work has been done in the past little while. But either way, if you haven't opened up a Bull Bitcoin account, what are you waiting for? Do it. Use our promo code below. If you do that, fund your account, $21 will be added to your account.
Can't beat it. Can't beat it. Just in case I can't find the disclaimer in the new Anchor episode editor, nothing we say on this program is financial advice. And if you listen to us, bankruptcy is in your future. So do not listen to us. We know nothing. Len and I hold no licenses. We have, between us about 80 or 90 IQ and a couple of brain cells to rub together. So don't listen to anything we say. And if you do listen to something we say and you do get rich, you owe us actually 10% of the proceeds. So
I'm shaking my head for the audio.
Can't touch us if you lose it all, but if you don't, remember me come Christmas time. That's
about no. The reason why I would never even suggest such a thing is, number one, morally that's not right. But second thing, in order to do that, you'd have to trade, because if you're simply buying and holding Bitcoin, we're all going to get wealthy at the same time. Yeah. So. Right. And again, like maybe one more thing to add on top of all that. This is all just tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Not only is it not financial advice,
I'll say it now too, since we are more and more cannibalizing the YouTube audience via Twitter. If you're listening on Twitter, retweet the show. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, like the video, share it out, send it to your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your mechanic, your priest, whatever. Put some wind in the sails of the CBP flag here. So.
Or your mother spirit, or something,
or your whatever. Yeah. Okay. There goes the monetization.
Long list of people you could.
Yeah. Good.
Right. I'm not gonna.
So the housekeeping last week, Len. Who did you talk to? You did last week. You're doing this week. I think you're maybe also doing next week, and then I'll pick up a few interviews in between there. Who do you got this week?
Well, Tarash is coming in, and we'll be talking about Bitcoin mining on an industrial level, because he's part of a company that offers Sunnyside Digital, I believe is the name of the company. Yeah. And he offers equipment to people or companies that need it. So setting it up, providing solutions. This seems to be a lot of the things I've been looking at these days, and a lot of the discussion I've been talking about. So this will be fun to talk about. Last week I talked to Ronnie from El Salvador. He's the gentleman that moved there from Canada 3 years ago, I think was exact. Either way, it was within the past 4 years. And it's good to chat with him and get a different perspective of what's going on over there. He's got boots on the ground over there. He's living the lifestyle of a Bitcoiner. And so he's putting his his money where his mouth is. In this case, his sats where his mouth is. So it's good to hear what's going on over there. So it was a good chat. Yeah. And I want to bring him back on, especially as things progress in El Salvador. But
yeah,
that was last week.
Definitely. If you enjoyed that, you'll enjoy our other stuff we've done with Jaime, and there's tons of stuff to talk about with El Salvador. Obviously, huge story with their Bitcoin strategy. Obviously, everyone knows that. So yeah, interesting stuff there, Len. This week, we have a full slate of stuff, but as always, the boosts first, I think, right? Why don't we head there next?
Yeah, okay. Owen to 500 sats. He writes in with the Ronnie discussion I had. He says, interesting convo. Good question about the future 5+ years. Guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. And this is with respect to what happens when Bukele eventually is no longer in office, because I don't think he will be able to run again unless he's able to jump through more hurdles. That may be possible, but if that isn't the case, wonder what happens with the country.
Do you want to see that though? Like, isn't that a little worrisome to you that's like even on the table, him jumping through more hurdles for a third term?
That is a little bit concerning. I'm not sure if he wants to do that. I can't speak for him. I haven't even talked to anybody about that. Everyone seems to like what he's done to date. So having him there for another term might make a lot of people happy, especially if they continue on the same course.
Yeah.
But, historically, if you're in there for too long, things, I don't want to jinx it, but, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And who knows what's going to transpire if he does go for a third term or even beyond that. So either way, 5 years from now is going to be very interesting, to say the least. But not just there, here, down south, just about everywhere.
Yep.
A lot of interesting things going on. Rander, 500 sats. He writes in, fuck the CBC, Global, and CTV. Can't stand any mainstream media, honestly. Doom Damazon, 521 sats. Writes in, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Bitcoin plus food, 1,000 sats, nothing, he writes. Absolutely, or she, or whatever, writes in nothing. So, man, I'm giving you an opportunity to write something, and whatever. Thank you
CBP,
for your sats.
growing platform will literally say anything for 1,000 sats. You don't get that kind of value anywhere.
No. Doug and Roop, 1,025 sats. He writes, looking forward to joining the 3+ million other Brit males who are neither working nor actively looking for work once fiat continues to lose value to 5 cents per US. So 5 sats per US cent and below. And then I'll be a full-time shit poster. So in theory, while not fiat economically active, I'll be busy. So he's going to be doing his part to do shit post after the British pound collapses. And this is with respect to a story last week. We talked about there's 3+ million British males that just are not looking to work. And that's a sizable portion, a measurable portion of their working population, which is very troublesome.
I think that's going to go down after Sony's, state of play video that came out last week. I don't think anyone's going to be looking to play video games, at least not those ones. What a dud. Did you watch that? You're a gamer. Did you watch the state of play from Sony last week? Total dud. Embarrassment.
Really?
Oh yeah. Dog shit. Some of the worst I've ever seen. The guys from Digital Foundry I was listening to today, even them, they're usually pretty even keeled and they just shat all over it. It is true though that the gaming industry really sucks now. Like I said to you before on the show, there's only like 4 games maybe I would play regularly. And it says something that I re-picked up Call of Duty last year for the first time in a while, just because there's no other decent like game to play. You can make the argument that was not decent either. But anyway, funny, the Doug and Roop, he didn't mention the mandatory service. So he's going to be busy whether he's employed or not, right? He'll be volunteering for His Majesty's Royal Army, I guess. Is that the intention of our boy Rishi over there? He's up to something over there. He's up to something in the rain.
But a lot of other countries do that as well, that you're forced to like.
Doesn't mean it's good. It's still a stupid idea.
Well, I'm just trying to say like it's not like out of the realm of normalcy. Just other countries do it. And maybe some people will pick up some discipline from that. I've never gone through it, so I can't say anything. But I know in Italy, it's forced upon you. Israel, Switzerland,
probably a few places.
Sweden, so a bunch of other countries. So whatever it is, I mean, you're forced to do your mandatory service. And
do you think all the migrants have to do mandatory service when they come over to Italy?
They don't. You have to be a citizen in order to do that. And you have to be a citizen within a certain age group between, I think, 18 and 27.
Well, they're definitely between that age. The question is whether or not they have to do it for other reasons. A story for another time, let's say.
I could just speak strictly as per the law, which I know. So I know maybe they'll have them do other things. But I just want to double back. You were saying about the video game thing. This is the worst generation for video game consoles.
The consoles have been terrible, I think. What do you think? Yeah. We both have PS5s. I bought my PS5 from you in a parking lot. So, yeah.
The amount of games that they're rehashing from yesteryear, they're just...
Oh, man.
It goes to show you, not only has the movie industry lost any sort of ideas, the video game world has also done that. When you're just rehashing the same old thing and just it's a repackaged version of some old game. And I understand that works. That's a good idea. But
everything's a boardroom game. The guys at Digital Foundry call it. Everything now is clearly a boardroom game. I think that's a great term. It's like a bunch of people who have never built a game or played a game, just looking at data and dopamine receptors and pumping out some shit product. 100%. Oh yeah. Go look.
I don't know
if you haven't looked yet at the state of play. I can't remember what the first game they showed was. This is not CBP material, but whatever. I was listening to these guys today, and now it's on my mind. The first game they showed was a new IP, and the it took up like a third maybe of the total runtime of the State of Play. State of Play is this thing Sony does every so often to put on display the games that it has coming down the pipe. It's like a hype video, basically. Len, they did mostly pre-rendered video. Like it was all just fake, no gameplay. And then when they showed the gameplay, it just looked like Overwatch. Like just garbage gameplay, garbage story, garbage shit humor. Great example of a boardroom game. Like they take a formula they think is going to work and they just drop it on you and hope that enough kids are obsessed with the shiny colors and explosions that they get mom and dad to buy the game and another $50 worth of skins on top of that and call it a day. It's just unbelievable how dog shit the games are. They are coming out with a Super Mario Galaxy style Astro game, which you may be interested in. That was the thing they used to show you how the sensitive triggers worked.
Astro games are good.
That game is going to be huge. Apparently, it's like 80 different levels or something like that. It's enormous. Yeah,
Astro game, they're very good. They do a good job with that. That's a Sony exclusive, and they build it in house. And I like the fact there's two things I just want to mention before if you want to get off this topic. Number one, it's a good thing that Xbox and PlayStation are both backwards compatible with the previous generation, because if they weren't, they'd be absolute trash. And the second thing, all this, what I said, doesn't apply to the Switch. The Switch, they have way better games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
Nintendo IP is unbelievable.
Yeah. Just the Zeldas, the two Zeldas alone are system sellers. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
All right. Great. We'll talk about that more on the first ever CBP video game podcast coming out next week. Look forward to that.
That would be a one and done deal. I don't think we'll go any further than that. Joey, do you want to talk about ocean mining?
Sure. Which choice do I have? You're in charge of the stories, so
let's talk quickly about them, very, very quick, because I think because we're talking about El Salvador, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about ocean mining, because they formed what they call an international hub of business development.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly what that means, but this hub is going to be located in El Salvador. It's, from my vantage point, this is a rather interesting move, because ocean mining, they're a mining company, mining pool. I'd love to know what business development they're going to be able to take advantage. What opportunities exist for a Bitcoin mining pool. Granted, I'm looking at with my blinders on through the basement. I don't have the same type of grand scope that they do, but it's hard for me to see what it is that they're going to be developing into. But I'll leave it to them. They've been very good so far. They've been very good actors so far. Things could change. Who knows? But anyways, El Salvador, they are slowly becoming a hub for Bitcoin-related companies. So this is not the only one that has moved there or started setting up shop. Another one that immediately comes to mind is Strike. Remember, they moved their headquarters? I think from Chicago it was initially.
Yeah.
But either way, it was somewhere in the mainland United States, and it moved over to El Salvador. So that was just about a month or two ago. But so now I'm going to go to what we talked about earlier. What's going to happen if Bukele is out of office? These companies that are slowly setting up shop, doing business over there, trying to build a Bitcoin community within El Salvador. Is there a potential rug waiting to happen?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. You kind of. So I'm looking at these moves. Good moves. Strike moving their headquarters. That's pretty ballsy. Ocean is just setting up this hub of international hub of business development. So I would imagine they're investing some time and money into this, but their headquarters is not going to be located there. So the rug for Ocean would not hurt as much as it would Strike. So yeah, you're in the same opinion. There is something that could potentially go wrong with all this. Not to say that it will, but the chances are greater than zero.
I think the chances are pretty high. Like,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, think about. Listen, I don't want to get into Mexico, but we're going to get into it. Okay. So strap in. Mexico has 37 candidates murdered, I think, in this cycle. Did I see that right? 37 different candidates for president murdered during an election cycle. And they end up electing a climate scientist as a president. It just seems incredibly unlikely that Mexico would elect, I'm putting air quotes around that, a climate scientist. Elections are notoriously, fraught with corruption and cheating and international interference. And the idea that El Salvador in 5 years, if Bitcoin is worth, 500K, the strategy's been an overwhelming success. The US dollar continues to weaken, doesn't have to go away, but continues to weaken. The idea that the powers that be will not take a keen, acute interest in the outcome of the next presidential election, I think is like completely ridiculous. And they're going to rug pull Bitcoin in El Salvador for sure. From what I understand, outside of Bitcoin Beach, and I would love for someone to tell me I'm wrong about this. From what I understand, oh my God, this spicy water is giving me burps here.
The gas, but
the AHA waters are so good, but man, you just can't.
I had never heard of it.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Shoppers Drug Mart brand. Anyway,
that's a copyright infringement.
Thank you, Galen. So anyway, the thing like that people don't think about, lost my train of thought. The election in El Salvador, the next one, is going to be significant. There's no way that everyone's just going to sit by, everyone being sort of the, global powers. They're not just going to sit idly by while this country that was, an IMF debt slave emerges as a shining beacon of exactly how to get out from underneath the IMF's thumb. Victoria Nuland is waking up with cold sweats thinking about how she can start a war or a coup d'etat or whatever over there. I'd even take it a step further, Len. Bukele's got 4 years now since his
he was just sworn in like a day or two ago.
If Bitcoin gets to 500K, he doesn't make it through 4 years. I'm not saying he dies, but he doesn't make it through 4 years. There's no way. And like I was saying before I started burping, my understanding is that outside of Bitcoin Beach, like the El Zonte area, there's not a lot of Bitcoin adoption in that country. Make of that what you will. I know they're mining. I know they have it as a treasury asset, blah, blah, blah. But again, like I think we have blown it up to be more than it actually is on the ground. The idea is like, magnanimous in a lot of ways. And it's directionally something that indicates there's change potentially coming for a lot of these countries, but it's going to be pretty easy to upset that delicate initial adoption stage inside of the next 4 years. And I think even after that. So I expect that there's going to be like I said, a focused effort from powers that be. Doesn't mean that Bitcoin's going to disappear in El Salvador, but you're not going to see a lot of stories about them no longer needing the IMF, getting out of their debts. Their bonds are a screaming success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They'll go back to the status quo, and the status quo is ugly for the country and its people, but it's a beautiful thing for the proponents of this debt slavery relationship that, let's say that the very few top of the food chain countries have with the rest of the world. So yeah, do I think it's a rug pull to answer your question in a word? Yeah, it's definitely a rug pull waiting to happen. Did
you see the video of the snipers that were being, I guess, greeted by Bukele, and they sent out a bunch of snipers. I forget the number, 20, 30, 40, 50, just strategically placed for his swearing in ceremony to ensure that nobody. Did you see that video? Because it was pretty interesting. No. They all had masks on. So yeah, they understand that there is some danger with respect to him just doing what he does against the United States, because he's thumbed his nose at them many times, and also the IMF. And you're right, Bitcoin adoption, aside from say El Zonte or Bitcoin Beach, it's not very prevalent over there. But you know what? It doesn't really matter in the end. What really matters is there's improvement in the country. Crime, it has been reduced, and there's opportunities for people to work. Those are the things that truly matter. Bitcoin adoption will come or not, depending if people want it. You can't forcefully put it on them, but if they have the opportunity to take it and they want it, they have that option. But like I was saying with Ronnie, there's a lot of people in a lot of parts of the world, El Salvador included, they're basically whatever they make, there's not much savings that they have. They basically spend it for food, shelter, and everything else just to sustain themselves. So whatever's left, they're not going to buy Bitcoin if there's anything left, right? So it's just kind of
that's what I mean. Like, I don't think I'm not saying that we should give up just because the rug is coming. I think the rug is kind of inevitable for El Salvador, but we shouldn't give up. And who knows, maybe you plant the seed and maybe it's not this generation, but the next one, right? That takes up the cross as the old phrase goes. So I don't know, but I'm not like negative on El Salvador. If anything, I'm way more positive than I used to be. But I mean, this is the danger. Realist. Yeah, and this is the danger of the cult of personality around Nayib Bukele. Do you even know? Has he ever mentioned Has anyone ever looked into or thought about or considered or looked forward to who might take the mantle from him and carry this on? No. No one in Bitcoin has a name. Not these guys who pump him up all the time, celebrating the bond prices. Not these guys all the time who podcast about how, he's in tight with Max Kaiser and Jack Mallers is there in a suit. None of these fucking people have given this any thought. They are, it seems to me, looking more for clicks than they are for competent plans. And this is what you get. You get a guy who's become more of a celebrity than a guy with a contingency strategy. And so the other question, Len, if he doesn't have a contingency strategy or hasn't talked about it, is he in it for the Bitcoin or is he in it for the celebrity?
No, I think he's in it for neither. If I have to guess, and I could be proven wrong with this, he's playing 4D chess. And a lot of the moves he's done to date, they were executed perfectly to getting rid of the gangs and locking them up. Like, a lot of this had to have been done and done perfectly to ensure that there isn't any backlash, because these people are armed. They have a lot of, so they were able to do that. So in terms of him having a contingency plan, I'm pretty sure he has one, given the fact he's having these snipers just protect him through.
He's never talked about it. He's never brought up a name. In fact, I don't even think, like, if I look around, almost anywhere, I think about Canada, right? Mm-hmm. Canada is maybe not the best example, but it's the easiest one to look at. Even if I don't think that Trudeau necessarily has a contingency plan for when he loses at the ballot box next year,
if he loses, not a guarantee.
I suspect he will. Let's pretend he does. I don't necessarily think there's a thought on his part that he's grooming someone for the position of Liberal Party leader. But I know who the 5 people are. One of them is going to be the Liberal Party leader, right? I can't even do that in El Salvador. So it's not like I even need Bukele to tell me that he's grooming somebody to take his throne. But there's not even another person around him who I can point to and say, yeah, this is a likely candidate. Now, maybe that's just me not paying enough attention. Maybe if I was like local there or watching the news more with stuff like that, I'd see it. But in Bitcoin, there is a pretty good, we have a pretty good idea about stuff like this most of the time. I haven't seen anyone talking about it either. So I don't know, if you're in the chat and you see it or you hear this week, you see it or know it, tell me. Let me know. But as far as I can tell, there's no one.
A potential, because he did step down as president for a brief time.
Yes.
The person who took his place was somebody that he trusted. I'm not trying to say that this particular person may be the heir apparent, but let's start with that person and see what's the connection. That person, is there going to be longevity? I don't know. So I who the heck really knows? So El Salvador, we want to do the CBP field trip to El Salvador, Joey. That'd be fun to do.
Do a live episode from the beach. I'll be surfing. I have to learn how to surf. I'm looking for any excuse to be at the beach with my shirt off. And so you're not going to really see me doing a lot of podcasting if we go. I'll be on the board there. No matter how many times I crash, I'll always look good coming out of the water. I've practiced that many times. So
it's a hard thing to. I've tried wakeboarding and it's kind of close. Anyways, Riot. Let's talk about them.
This is a big story. Under sort of reported story after the day that this came out.
Maybe not. We'll dive deep into this because they've made waves this past week because they have announced they would like to buy up Bitfarms. And this is all a proposal. $950 million is the price tag. And so the price they wish to buy per share for Bitfarms is $2.30 USD. Mm-hmm. And as of this past weekend, the price per share was $2.27 USD. So it's within the realm of that. I don't know what it is today. It traded today, but I didn't get the price either way. So buying Bitfarms would make Riot, they're already a very large company, but this would make them the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner in the world. The video quality is looking crisp tonight. I don't know what's causing it to make it look good, but either way. So apparently this proposal was privately offered to Bitfarms. Right. So this came out and it was public, but apparently they first came to the people at Bitfarms and they gave them this proposal back in April. Yeah. But Bitfarms board rejected it. And should there be a path forward for this in one way or another, Riot would then have mining operations in countries like the US, Canada, Paraguay, and Argentina. Mm-hmm. And all this would be under 2.2 gigawatts of total power capacity and 52 exahash of total hash rate. Those are two numbers you can't discard. Now, the question I have, if they do buy Bitfarms, for instance, and to become the biggest publicly or the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner, is this a step in the right direction to have bigger Bitcoin mining companies, these big ones, amalgamate to become even bigger? It seems like to me, it's a little bit of centralization, but this isn't open to market. So participants could do whatever they want as long as they make shareholders happy and operate and comply with the laws. But with respect to Bitcoin mining, seems like a little bit of centralization, but I'll be talking about how this may not be total centralization in the next story. But let's stay on the Riot thing. Like, what's your thoughts on it?
This is a hostile takeover attempt. If you, I mean, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but boardroom etiquette is fleeting in this example, and I'll tell you why. Riot taking an offer to Bitfarms board in April and being rebuked, whatever the word is, and then taking it public a few months later or a month later is an example of what I would call sort of, a hostile takeover, an activist board trying to get things done. And so what happens normally is if you can't convince the board, you convince the shareholders. The problem with Riot shareholders and Bitfarms shareholders and all this stuff, how many people holding Bitfarms and Riot really care whether or not those two outfits merge from a mining centralization standpoint? 30% of the whole shareholders, it's small. It's a small number, right? And so or it's like the below the lowest integer. I think it's
as close to zero without being zero.
Yeah. So like the thing that I would point out is that shareholders are mercenaries when it comes to the per price or the per share price. Would you say that the offer was 250 something? Did I hear that right?
$950 million proposal, but also of note too, I didn't mention.
No. What was the per share?
$2.30 USD.
That's less than what Bitfarms is trading at now, right? It's trading at 233 today, up 5% with the price of Bitcoin, I guess. So to me, this is what I don't get. I don't really get where that number comes from. That's the only thing. I know, and Boomer's mentioning this in the chat, there's some beef between the ex CEO of Bitfarms and the company, and it's like this kind of Young and the Restless drama that's playing out behind the scenes with a little bit of a glimpse into what's going on through stuff like this. From a centralization standpoint, though, Len, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it's bad. Of course. How many times have you and I talked about this? We disagree on a bunch of stuff when it comes to mining, like out of band transactions and what miners should allow and whether Ocean's a good idea or a sustainable business model. But we agree on this, 100%. If we keep allowing industrial miners to grow and grow and grow through M&A and grow and grow and grow in terms of government, let's call it like inverse regulatory capture, where regulators capture these miners, it's not good for Bitcoin. It is not good. And I like that some podcasts that I listen to, TFTC, for example, I think he had somebody on like 2 weeks ago. I can't remember who, but like talking about some of the stuff that you and me have been saying for the better part of a year, about how the thing to look at is not how miners are suddenly, growing, they're deploying hardware, they're intertwined with local regulators, they're working at the state level to influence. No, man. What you should be looking at is how much they're relying on regulators to stay in business. And if you keep taking smaller fish out of the water, if they keep on, if the food chain keeps on narrowing, then you're going to have problems because the targets are easier to take care of. And, Bitfarms, we like Bitfarms. Ben Gagnon's been on the show a few times, and Riot, obviously Pierre Rochard's been on the show. He's hilarious. If everything goes sideways in Bitcoin mining, you and me, or in Bitcoin, I should say, you and me would be out of a job for sure. But Pierre can start a career in stand-up comedy. I'm pretty confident about that. So I don't know. I don't think that anyone is taking this seriously enough. I know there's some commentary, like I said, in some podcasts and on Twitter, but it sounds like you and me agree that this is it's getting into dicey territory because now, what do you have? You have Marathon or whatever, Mara, Riot / Bitfarms, Hut.
Clean Spark is another one.
Clean
Hut
Spark,
is not a huge one.
Iron.
Iron. there's a few publicly traded miners that are
but
quite
not
large.
many, but not many. And then when you boil down to the pool level on top of that, like, it's not that many. See, you got all these miners, I shouldn't say all these miners. I don't want to, sound the alarm here or be someone who's like, screaming bloody murder, the sky is falling. It's not a Chicken Little type story yet. But when you think about the proxy mining pools all just going to Ant, allegedly, the miners centralizing through M&A, and also honestly then through geography, which people are not talking about enough. If you ask me, like, miners are all sort of migrating operations or opening operations in quote unquote free states. Like, you're easy. It's easier to take somebody out if you just have to deal with one local government, one local set of policymakers. And it's a little worrying to me for sure. But like, what does it matter to you long term? It doesn't change your conviction. That doesn't change my conviction. It's just it's annoying that people can't see the obvious problem here. And again, it makes me wonder, where are the priorities here? I would love to hear how Pierre Rochard thinks about this. Because
come on, you're gonna get a slanted and biased viewpoint.
No, you're not. I think honestly, if you ask him, he may say that it's bad for centralization. My curiosity is how would he square the circle? Does he or would he square it? Would he just say, yeah, I wish Riot wouldn't do this, but the shareholders are demanding it or whatever? Like, that's a whole other story. I think Pierre's a square dealer. He may actually say that.
No, see, like I said, this is heading in the wrong direction. But the next story is going to kind of help solidify that it really isn't that bad. So before we even go there, $2.30 is what they're going to be buying. They're offering to buy Bitfarms. Joey, when is the last time Bitfarms was at $2.30 USD? Take a guess.
Today.
What month?
Today.
Besides today.
Well, I have the chart up, so I'm cheating here. Higher than 230? Geez, I don't know. Let's see. 249 in March of this year. So
we're talking you're in borderline winter still. So the fact that it actually was winter, they're offering 230. That was a price higher than what it was for the past 2 months.
The offer was made in April, right? So in April, the price was between 223 and I see and 173. It was low.
So that was it's a fair offer. Number one. Number two, Riot is 9.5% owner of Bitfarms' outstanding shares.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the largest shareholder right now of Bitfarms. So it's not like this came out of nowhere. This has been a strategic move for quite some time.
Yeah.
So is it a step in the right direction? Probably not, but it's not as bad as I think it is, or we think it may be. Because if you look at, number one, the network-wide hash rate, there has been a significant drop-off after the halving. As I suspect, this is my opinion, older and inefficient equipment was unplugged after the halving. But if you look at the past couple of weeks, you're going to see that we're back on the rise in terms of overall hash rate. The next difficulty adjustment is going to take us up another notch of 1.5 to 2%. And 2 weeks ago, we had another notch up. So this has been steady for the past few weeks. There's more equipment being added onto the network. So it makes me wonder if companies that are specialized and specifically mining Bitcoin, stuff like Bitfarms, for instance, they're taking a hit as the expense of mining goes up. But companies or countries out there that have access to previously stranded energy, they're simply starting to monetize this. We've mentioned a few stories: Bhutan, Ethiopia, Kenya, El Salvador, Argentina, Oman, Qatar. And if these are just a few that I've remembered that they have announced that they started mining Bitcoin. There could be a bunch of others. Russia, who the heck knows? So how many other countries out there are doing the same? They're mining Bitcoin because the hash rate is going up. Somebody or something is plugging in a lot of equipment to make the hash rate go up. Also, oil and gas companies too. They may also be taking advantage of it. So with that being said, they may start amalgamating some of these big publicly traded miners, but hash rate goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's mining, somebody's plugging in equipment. So it may be more centralized in the publicly traded sphere, but overall, I think it's still very much decentralized.
You think, eh? I'm not sure I share your conviction there, but I understand where you're coming from. I think what we really need, like the next it seems to me like we're kind of chopping in terms of mining centralization, you know, like we're talking about how hash rate's going up. People are deploying miners. They're online somewhere. We don't know where all of them are. You know, that's good. But then I see the M&A stuff, the major miners, the ones who really, by the way, influence policy around Bitcoin in the United States or are influenced by the United States government in terms of policy. I see them getting closer together and closer to government. That worries me. The thing that's going to break us out of this, Len, is a country announcing they're mining Bitcoin and not, you know, the Kingdom of Bhutan or whatever, like a G20 nation announcing they're bringing online some kind of Bitcoin mining, or a major oil producing nation announcing they're bringing online some kind of Bitcoin mining. That's going to be the thing.
Oman?
Whatever. Like I don't think it's enough. I don't know. Do you think it's enough?
No, it's never going to be enough. But are you going to ever hear? At least at this particular moment, I think it's inevitable we will hear it, but I don't think we'll hear it for the next while. You're going to hear a Canada.
It'll never happen here. We just don't have the foresight.
You never say never. It may happen.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if Pierre surprises, but I don't think the Trudeau government is going to be able to do it, mostly because they're tied up with all these other priorities, right? Like even if the Trudeau government wanted to, it just seems unlikely. And I think a lot of governments around the world don't necessarily, it's not that they don't like Bitcoin. It's that something has to give in terms of their policy platform. And in an election cycle, the risk reward for announcing you're going to put, you know, Bitcoin miners online, it doesn't make sense. So I don't expect to see it in the next year or two, but yeah, I think
much longer than that.
5, 10 years.
Multiply it by 10 maybe.
Yeah. 5, 10 years, something like that. You might start seeing whispers.
But it's inevitable. You'll see, like
it is inevitable. It is inevitable, and that will be the thing that moves us out of the centralization sort of rut that we're in now, right? I think on the chart, right? If I look at centralization, you know, it is chopping, but I think it's on a downward trajectory. Like it's becoming more centralized than it should be. And I think a lot of people are seeing this. You know, the other thing too to consider, Len, is when you get all these guys who are acting only in terms of fiat interests, you know, you're going to get more out of band transactions, and that's bad too. You're going to get more people trying to enrich themselves with tricky accounting on the financial side, and you know, the other thing to consider too is the miners. Like when you look at the miners, they're net sellers of Bitcoin by default, right? And so, you know, what you want is diversity in the times these miners are selling, I think, a little bit. And if everyone is, you know, operating on the same plane and using the same, you know, the same math to figure out when to sell, you're going to get a lot of pressure at these local tops, and you know, they're not going to wait till the bear market to be forced sellers anymore. I think they've learned that lesson. And that's why I think, like, one thing we always talk about, and Zero Hedge speaks about this all the time, how, you know, Bitcoin's rallies get stomped down by selling in the futures market. But I think the other thing to consider is that miners are, as you mentioned, they're hurting for cash now for the next little while the halving kind of, you know, finds its footing. And these guys are going to be selling tops all the time. They're going to be selling tops all the time. We just finished a quarter. So let's see in the next sort of reporting period what these guys say about whether or not they sold at the 74,000 high or 73,000 high. What's your guess? My guess is that a bunch of them sold a bunch of Bitcoin at those highs, and they did it because that's the rational thing to do. And maybe they also did it because that's what the shareholders wanted. And so, like, when you put all this together, you get these guys doing things that are net negative for the price, and I think net negative for the hash rate. Maybe not in absolute terms of you know the power of the network, but it's not the same. It's like not as valuable a number if it's all coming from 4 miners in 2 states in America. You know, like, it's just not. I firmly believe it's a miss. You know, at some point my prediction here is that at some point we'll start talking about exahash as a misleading statistic, because it's going up forever. Sure. But, like, is it really going up if it's just coming from the same 5 companies in the same 2 states in the same country?
But it isn't that, Joey. The publicly traded miners last changed, they made up about 1/3 at most of the overall hash rate.
Yeah.
So based on that, Texas, it maybe makes up half of the overall hash rate. Of the overall hash rate from the publicly traded miners.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not that like it is a big slice.
That's a lot.
It is, but if you're talking about all the other ones, and I think it's becoming more and more prevalent that they are becoming bigger players. Look, I'll say this too, because I don't want to miss this point. All Bitcoin miners, or just about all of them, maybe a few aren't, but I think 99% are fiat driven. That's what they're there
for sure.
That's what they're there for. They're there to make a buck. So they're trading in their work for some money as a result.
It's their legal responsibility to make a buck. Like that's
and I'm fine with that. I respect that. That's where they operate. Now, in terms of being solely a Bitcoin miner, I think this is going to be something that is eventually going to disappear. They are probably always selling. I don't think they're selling just to tops. I think they're always selling because they have to pay for expenses. So they're selling if the price of Bitcoin is today around 70,000, and if the price of Bitcoin is 50,000 tomorrow, they'll be selling it at that time too, because they have expenses to pay and they can't wait another month to pay that, or else they get shut off. Yeah. So there's always a constant sell. But if they're only mining Bitcoin, they are wholly reliant on the price of Bitcoin to make ends meet. And if the price of Bitcoin goes up, good. If the price of Bitcoin goes down, bad for them. So other companies like oil and gas, for instance, or even countries that start doing this, this will be a division of the overall company. So if things go well in that division, the company as a whole benefits. If the things go poorly within that division, the company as a whole doesn't benefit. But there's other things that could help them usher them through this tough time. So through tough times, they'll be able to deal with it. Like I'm looking at oil and gas particularly. And if you have somebody, I think it was Boomdust mentioning Exxon. Imagine they got into this, and they probably are, but they do it on a bigger scale. If the price of Bitcoin goes down, does it really impact Exxon's bottom line in the end?
No,
not really.
No.
But the price of Bitcoin, does it really impact? But no, it's just part of their overall their company, the makeup of their company, and that's where it's probably going to be moving going forward. These specific companies that mine Bitcoin, eventually, they're not operating at a net gain. They're all operating at a net loss. How could you sustain this forever?
Yeah.
The piggy bank of selling more shares to eventually that fucking runs dry. You can dilute. This ends eventually. My prediction: those companies are going to eventually go tits up unless they somehow have other things to keep them going, other ventures. But specifically Bitcoin mining, I don't think that's going to be there for the long term. Maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, but long term. No.
You're almost there. The other venture isn't data centers or anything else. The other venture is the government propping them up, and they become sort of nationalized. I think that's the rational endpoint for me. It's not that they're going to start doing fucking Minecraft level hosting or whatever. Like they may, but the end game is, if this thing really takes off, they'll be nationalized, and there's almost no choice, because unlike gold mining, which is resource and labor intensive, of course, but Bitcoin mining, like I've said this before, a government running a gold mine is hard because they don't have any expertise, and running a gold mine is difficult. A government running a Bitcoin mine is a lot easier. Everything's already plugged in, everything's already running. You nationalize the facility, you nationalize the power that they're using, and Bob's your uncle. That's it. The party's over for you. Your day is done. And so I think that's the thing that's going to keep them up. It's not that Bitcoin mining is an unsustainable business. It's just an unsustainable private business. And as we know, there's many unsustainable public businesses that, it's an oxymoron, I guess, in its own right, but many unsustainable public endeavors that are kept running and kept operational because they benefit the jurisdiction in which they operate, or the people benefit from it. And in this case, I think the answer, kind of contains both those points. And so that's the thing that, also worries me, that it's not just about, the relationship and the cozying up and the centralization of power. It's that it's a nationalization target. I think it's that's a rational step, in my opinion, that they would do this. I think QTR points out in a couple of his articles that they've actually nationalized gold miners in the past, or tried to, or talked about it. And probably they stopped because it's not palatable. But I don't know, man. People who don't have Bitcoin hate Bitcoin. Governments who can't tax Bitcoin hate Bitcoin. And I've said this many times that, the number of people who will vote for this stuff is growing by the day. And so, at the slave suggestion box, as our buddy Ragnar likes to say, it's easy to conceive of a world where everybody votes to nationalize Bitcoin miners or for a party that wants to nationalize Bitcoin mining or whatever. Like the thing. I think the point is, you and me may disagree on sort of the fringe here, or the outside, outside strike zone here. But at the end of the day, we both agree that all this stuff is possible, and preparing for it is important if you're a Bitcoiner. And so how do you prepare for it? I think, Boomer said in the chat, he sold all his mining stocks. I don't know. Is that a good idea? Maybe. Is it a good idea to buy mining stocks knowing that the government's going to prop it up? Maybe. Or do you just buy Bitcoin and, sit quietly in your basement like Len and I and wait, for the meteor to hit? Maybe that's the answer. I'm not sure. But, there's a lot of things that are possible here. Trip Ace is in the chat talking about nationalizing Bitcoin mining and paying UBI. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? Like nothing is off the table. We've seen crazy stuff happen in the last few years, and I expected the craziness to continue. Quite honestly, I think betting against the craziness at this point is the wrong bet. Which
the only thing you can do,
the case.
The only thing you can do, my opinion, could be wrong. Buy Bitcoin, stack it.
Yeah,
way you go.
yeah.
Who cares about the craziness? The craziness helps you.
Stack your sats. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it ain't Bitcoin, you can't live in it. What the fuck are you doing buying it?
Yeah. You go long the craziness, I think, right? That's the you do it by buying Bitcoin. I think that's true. Not financial advice, of course, as I mentioned many other times. Yeah.
Two more stories. We're kind of up against closing in an hour. I want to get this two in. Semler Scientific Inc. They made some waves this past week because they bought some Bitcoin. They're a publicly traded company. They announced they bought Bitcoin on May 28th this past week. They're listed on the Nasdaq under the ticker SMLR. Take a look at it if you want. So these guys, they followed in the CBP footsteps. Also, MSTR added Bitcoin to their treasuries. Good for them. They bought 581 Bitcoin. This was for an aggregate amount of $40 million from what I have here. I didn't confirm this, but this is from the article. And for those asking what Semler Scientific does, according to their website, they are a pioneer in developing and marketing technology products and services to healthcare providers to combat chronic diseases. This is pretty far away from Bitcoin. It's nothing to do with Bitcoin.
So is MSTR though.
You could kind of make an argument because they are a technology company. There is the slightest of overlap. The slightest. This being providing services to healthcare providers to combat chronic diseases. There's zero overlap. You might as well be on the other side of the spectrum. But they must have been orange pilled hard because they bought some Bitcoin. And without any more news, the only thing I could find from Semler Scientific was that they bought Bitcoin. Their stock price jumped from around $23.50 to around $31 when it was announced. It's since has settled to around $29. I don't know if it's gone up today, but it was $29 on the weekend. Still a nice gain for those who played the market. And I just want to drive home the point that investors or traders or both seem to like this type of news. Buying Bitcoin, and it seems like a good method to temporarily pump the price of a company. This can only last so long because I would expect investors to punish the company, the price, if the Bitcoin price of Bitcoin drops hard, then the price of this company obviously is going to drop hard. Look at MSTR as an example of how volatile it goes as per the price of Bitcoin. So this is something that works as long as Bitcoin goes up. When price of Bitcoin goes down, this is really going to hurt them. So, but what I'm looking at here, there are a lot of zombie companies out there, a ton. And how much longer before a bunch of them start following suit here and make an announcement that they too have bought Bitcoin? I suspect there's going to be a lot of shadiness to come around alongside it, because if there's going to be a potential short-term pump, we got to kind of figure out what's going to happen. But either way, investors seem to like this, and I think they're going to potentially start demanding companies to do this.
Yeah.
If they see that there's examples here, and I got another one in next story, of buying Bitcoin, pumping up the price, why wouldn't investors want this? They want to get the maximum gain from their investment. Is this good long-term for an investment? I'm not going to say, but short-term seems to work.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a great idea. The Bitcoin strategy, Bitcoin on the balance sheet for miners doesn't make sense because you're forced selling, right? You're not really a cash flowing business in the same way that Semler Medical or MSTR or Metaplanet or whatever, company XYZ is cash flowing and is able to deploy some of that free cash flow into Bitcoin every quarter, every month, whatever. To me, like it's hard for me to understand how all these companies talk about in their quarterly reports, their quarterly conference calls, we were affected by inflation. That should be a word.
That's actually a great term, by the way.
Inflation.
I love that.
Inflation and debasement. Basically, they don't say debasement, but they do say all the time, like currency headwinds, which is just debasing the dollar. And they talk about this all the time. And some of the questions from financial media in the conference calls are pretty competently articulated about, why aren't you guys doing buybacks, which is the strategy everyone used to use, right? You have cash. It's a melting ice cube, as our buddy Simone likes to say. And you can't really sit on it. You should do buybacks. Apple just did like $100 billion buyback last quarter, something completely insane, because there's just nowhere to spend the money, right? Like if you're a company like Apple size, you're not going to acquire a smaller company because, let's face it, unless someone is competing with you and on your corner, you don't need to waste your money on inferior product, inferior staff, inferior culture, whatever. If you're a company like Semler, you don't have enough money to acquire a company that's on your corner or whatever. So what do you do in either case? In my opinion, the answer is you buy a little Bitcoin and you indicate to people that you're thinking about these things, and you articulate, in a manner that Wall Street appreciates, because they all agree on the problem. You articulate in a manner that Wall Street appreciates. Say, look, we have two choices. Either we buy back the stock, which is not really good for the company. It's good for the shareholders, but it's not good for the company long term. Or we buy an appreciating asset, watch the value of the company go up thanks to the change in regulations around how we can report on this stuff, and we see where that takes us in 2 years or 3 years. And we embrace the network and we help build the network just by offering our implicit support. I think this is going to pick up, because the other thing too, Len, that you didn't even mention, these companies can all just issue shares and buy. Like, that's the other thing that people don't get. It's an
ATM, right?
It's under discussed,
at the market. It's like it's a bank.
It's under discussed. Like MSTR does share issuance, but they also do convertible bonds. And these companies are a little smaller than MSTR. Like Semler's tiny, which I think is part of the reason why the stock rips so hard. But doing this kind of stuff is going to become the move. It is a speculative attack on the currency. I'm going to issue debt or stock or whatever and buy harder assets. Everyone does this anyways. Like, this is the thing I don't think people get. Like, we kind of laugh about this. Like, is it a good strategy? Is it not a good strategy? It is a good strategy. Not everyone buys Bitcoin with the stuff they issue, right? But I mean, look at like the Burr method in real estate. Everyone just takes out loans and equity loans over and over and over again to buy the hard assets and just ride the value of the hard asset and do it again and again and again, because the debt is the asset in that environment. And it's that is the asset in this environment as well. Who gives a shit what these guys make? I don't know if they make cafeteria trays or microscopes. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that they have some kind of vision here as to what the company could be if they start investing in a hard asset for their treasury, and they're doing it. So kudos to them. It's probably easier to do in a company that size. I appreciate that, but I think it's going to become the playbook more and more frequently
100%
going forward. Yeah.
It's not buying ETF, it's buying a spot. And I've been saying this all along. Companies could do this, and companies are doing this. Another one, Metaplanet. It's a company I said we shouldn't commit its name to memory. I was fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I've been proven wrong on this one, because they announced they bought more Bitcoin. This time around, they bought an additional 250 million yen worth of Bitcoin. That's around 1.5 million USD.
They're on it, man. They're on board. Like, they are a significant treasury holder of Bitcoin now.
Did you see their stock price, Joey? Or I could give you numbers.
Tell me, what is it? Yeah, I haven't seen it.
So before the announcement was made in April that they started buying Bitcoin, they were trading at around 20 yen per share. I'm not sure what that translates to in US dollars. 20 yen.
That translates to 1 bag of Skittles per share.
Okay, so 1 bag. So now it's 3 bags of Skittles because it's 60 yen per share.
Nice.
So it's 3x'd since this announcement. They first bought Bitcoin. I think they've made 2 additional purchases since April. So from what I could tell, there's no other news aside from buying Bitcoin that was announced. So all this run up was all just because they bought Bitcoin, and investors like the fact that companies are adding Bitcoin to their treasury.
Yeah.
Also of note, they are reducing exposure to the yen because they are a Japanese company. And the yen particularly lost 40% of its value against the US dollar in a little over 2 years. And if you throw in how much value the US dollar has lost in the last 2 years and change, this really goes to show you how bad the yen is performing. So, but back to Metaplanet, again, I'm going to say, I wonder how much longer before even Japanese publicly traded companies start doing the same thing, because the yen is not lighting the world on fire. Today, it's not trading. It's been flat today, but the past month, it hasn't been good. The past few years, it hasn't been good. Eventually, when you have companies do this, buy a little bit Bitcoin here, buy a little bit Bitcoin there, that's going to add to the supply shock that is eventually coming down the road. May not come next year, may not come in 5 years, but all this shit adds up.
60 days from now, right? It's usually 100 days from the halving. We're at about 40 right now, I think. I can't remember exactly how many, but you're going to start to see the effects of that halving soon. And you're right, this is going to contribute to it.
Yeah, you're going to have, aside from the ETFs, which I don't talk fondly, but they are purchasing Bitcoin. It takes away from the supply that is available on exchanges. Once it comes, theoretically, I don't think it's ever going to get to this scenario, but theoretically, when all exchanges have zero on their balance sheet that they could sell, where do they buy from? When somebody wants to buy Bitcoin, who the fuck do they buy from? At
CBP. What price? They call us for an OTC deal. They call our corporate number, which we don't have, but they'll get hold of us somehow.
That is a very theoretical situation, and probably will never come to pass. But there is going to be some semblance of reality there, because eventually exchanges are going to have very little on their balance sheet.
Yeah.
What happens then? What happens when somebody comes in and say, I want X amount, and there's not X that could be available?
The price goes
That's
up.
going to be, yeah. So that's very bullish for Bitcoin.
I agree.
But to go back to Metaplanet, like this stuff that they're doing and what Semler's doing, other companies are going to do this. I've been fucking saying this for a while. It may be hard to do, but this is the right way of doing business. Buy Bitcoin. Fuck it. If MicroStrategy could do it, if El Salvador could do it, I'm not trying to shit on El Salvador, but El Salvador.
We got to get SB on here, because I think the disagreement you guys have in our group chat is that it's the degree of which it should be easy to carry something like this out. For like I don't know, what's a good example? I think the one that you guys often disagree on are these endowments, right? Can an endowment buy spot Bitcoin instead of the ETF? Can a bank or a financial institution or a hedge fund buy spot instead of the ETF?
They can't.
Your position is that
they can't hold it, but they could buy it.
Yeah, your position is that they can and can hold it themselves as well, I think. And you're not. I don't think you're vindicated yet. I still think you're more wrong than right. But
all roads lead to land.
Keep doing it.
Just take time. All roads lead to land. What I say is, I understand there may be a problem of buying it, convincing the board and shareholders. The way I look at it, if you're buying an ETF that is directly tied to the price of Bitcoin, that exact same value could be used to buy spot Bitcoin and appease or not piss off investors and the directors, because you're essentially buying the same thing. It's just who holds it is a difference. So with respect to that, if a bank can hold our money, if I go to a bank and give them my money to hold on for me, motherfucker, they could hold on to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
that's a no-brainer. So that's not even a discussion to be had. Endowments, maybe they're not legally able to do this. I want to look at. I mean, the laws.
We got to find out. We got to put them in touch with land accounting services.
In terms of publicly traded companies, we have every week, it seems, another story.
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah.
And who knows who's next coming up that's going to do this.
Are they domiciled in the United States, either of these companies? They're not, right?
Metaplanet is traded on whatever the Japanese.
Is it domiciled here, though, is what I'm asking?
Oh, no idea.
Okay, that's important, too. Like, there's a lot of, barriers to entry, as we've seen in the States.
I know one thing, though, El Salvador, I said something about them. I don't want to shit on them. I just want to say, they are, in the grand scheme of things, very small.
Yes.
Companies like Apple fucking dwarf them. California dwarfs them many times over. So, but I want to try to say, if they can do it and they don't have access to the same type of resources that these other companies can do it,
right?
It's possible.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
They repatriated their Bitcoin. It used to be held, I think, by Coinbase.
Yeah.
It was some U.S. company that had, I don't know who the fuck had it.
I love the idea of repatriating Bitcoin as if it's like coming over on a carrier ship.
Yeah.
It's a transaction, or they just toss on a cold card and Buddy puts.
No, that's what it is. It's a cold card on his
Lululemon, his Lululemon sling pouch. He just comes over with the cold card.
Could you imagine? That'd be so cool. With the duress pin and everything.
Let's go on to notable stories before we get carried away here. Thanks for tuning. It was great. I really enjoyed that one. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back for tomorrow if you're on audio, if you're on video, or on Twitter Spaces. Since there's 100 or so of you there instead of on video. I realize that Twitter Spaces is cannibalizing YouTube, because YouTube, you can't just listen and do something else on your phone unless you pay for premium. But on Twitter, you can listen and do something else on your phone. This is the key killer app. So this is why we have to find out how we monetize Twitter Spaces anyway. Okay, so anyway, yeah. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. But if you're with us right now live on Twitter or YouTube, stick around. We're hopping in the next segment.
Yeah, don't be a cuck. Are you a fan of the old school NHL 94 game on the Genesis or SNES? Why not check out my show, the NHL 94 Podcast? From tournaments and tactics to the people who make up this community. Check it out wherever you listen to podcasts or find it on YouTube.